Open the pod bay doors, please, pal.
All right.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Look at the coast. We get together, have a few laughs.
A Movie Odyssey with Brad Patello and Gus Trout.
So many boobs in this movie.
So many boobs.
I forgot just how booby it was.
It's so like overtly, oh, you saved me. Now what do you want? Like, I will willingly give you my body. Like,
if any part of me pleases your senses.
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
Ridiculous.
This movie, I don't know how my friend got a hold of heavy metal because he was only a year older than me. I think his parents were a little bit more relaxed about like rated R stuff. It's one of those movies if my mom found out that I saw it and she knew what it was, not that she even knew what it was, you know what I mean? But like, I also didn't realize it was 81.
Yeah. 81.
Which it does have that 70s vibe in the animation, like all the rotoscoping and stuff.
Yeah, and the stories too. And the music.
Yeah.
Is my thing on? Should we record a little intro? Hey, gang. It's Brad Patello here, joined by my good friend Gus Trouth. And if you like animated boobs, boy, do we have a movie for you. It's Heavy Metal, 1981 animated film that was adapted from the adult illustrated fantasy magazine of the same title. How familiar are you with the magazine? Do you have any? My
brother, who's 6 years older than me, he would get them.
Yeah.
But like more in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that heavy metal logo a lot, like in the back of comic books and stuff. And sort of without the internet and stuff at the time, it was kind of like, it's like I knew it was something special without really even knowing anything, or you just would glean these little things before the internet days, you know?
Yeah, I probably have maybe 24 issues or so that I've amassed over the course of the last 30 years or so.
Oh man, I would love to page through those.
Yeah.
I didn't look up anything. I want to be amazed at all the cool factoids you say.
Okay.
Ooh.
I hope I can deliver. That's a lot of pressure. I don't know. Yeah, 1981. The magazine came out in 77. They're still doing it. It's
a fun idea. That's the coolest thing about this movie. I mean, the whole, like, I love short animation because it just, you can play with visuals and story ideas a little bit more freely. Which they were very free on this one. They were like boobs very only. There's a couple. There's two parts that don't have boobs, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They might be the best parts too.
3. I mean, if you include the wraparound story. True. The only female character who does not get naked is the 12-year-old, and thank goodness for that.
But like
the wraparound,
if time's a flat circle, technically we do see her naked.
Oh, well, never mind.
Right? I mean, that's the whole thing.
So
she becomes
like Tarna at the end. Does she get naked though?
No, I'm just saying because Tarna gets naked in the future. So eventually, someday, yeah.
Oh yeah, we know she's going to get naked at some point in the future for sure. Yeah. But we just don't see it.
We also see it though, right?
Oh, we do. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I am saying that it's all. She's the same girl. It's just it's a looping. She's a time loop.
Oh, well, my impression was that she gets reincarnated, like Tarna gets reincarnated into her body.
Okay.
Like
I thought it was like a time loop where it's
the
like
old
just
Tarna. Maybe, yeah. that's one. I wanted to discuss the ending because I didn't really understand it.
Look at us talking about the ending before we even get started with this son of a bitch. Classic.
Well, like the magazine, this is broken up into 7 segments. If you include, I don't know, a lot of people include the soft landing as a separate one from the guy going into his house, Grimaldi.
To start the entire kind of string story.
Yeah, the whole thing with the car was produced at a separate studio. This was all farmed out and done by different studios, mostly in Montreal.
Now, okay, that makes sense.
It's Canadian.
Style. Yeah, it is that intro is not the same as the airplane war one with all the rotoscoping. There's
rotoscoping.
I assumed though that the rotoscoped car intro was the same team that did the part. I don't know, the part with the airplanes and the war and the skeletons.
I have information on the directors here. Let's see. The soft landing was directed by 2 people named Jimmy Murakami and John Bruno, and then the B-17 segment was directed by Barry Nelson. So I'm not sure if it was the same studio. It's the same technique for sure.
Yeah, that's a really. Is it like a pixelation?
It was.
So why don't we start there with the
yeah. So
with space and time.
We open on a spaceship. It's basically the space shuttle. It opens and a car comes out. It's kind of an iconic scene. You see a bunch of different shots of the car in space, and it's rotoscoped. I don't know if it was a full-scale car, if it was a model. I think it's a Corvette, but they filmed a live-action thing.
Yeah.
And then some of the shots, you don't lose all of the live action. It's like you see the live action, but there's been like frame by frame painted on like a translucent overlay, like a color overlay. They used the same technique in 2001. It's a lot cleaner there. In the Stargate sequence, there's several shots where we're flying. It's a helicopter shot over like a landscape or an ocean, and it's like weird colors.
Yeah.
Those shots were done with the same kind of process. It's used a few times here, the car, the B-17, and then that one flying shot of Tarna.
Yeah, in part 6, yeah.
You kind of see in that shot, you kind of see the seams in the process. There's several like weird glitches that happen. But
there's a lot of
it's 1981, for what they were trying to do.
Oh, they were going for it.
Yeah, it was really ambitious. I think this movie in a lot of ways is a really significant artistic achievement. It's too bad that like it looks so dated because of the way it treats the women, but there's a lot of really good art in this film.
Oh yeah. Well, the Mobius stuff is obviously amazing. Yeah. There's great backgrounds. I would say my overall reaction is fun concept, overall poor execution. Like as a whole, it's very uneven.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There's parts that are like, that was drawn by the best animator in the in the studio, and then the next is like the janitor they were like, get over here. They must have had a really tight budget and a super tight deadline.
Yeah, it did,
because
there was
a lot of the animation almost looks like it's straight through, like you would do a stop motion.
Yeah, where they're just plowing ahead and not really doing pose to pose, because it is very uneven. I think the backgrounds are mostly good.
I would say that's where like the backgrounds is where the movie shines as far as artistically.
Yes.
Great color palettes. A lot of that's contributed to Mobius.
Yes.
Being like a crazy person and throwing
I
the
think
most insane colors in there, but it works.
He did most of the background paintings for that Tarna segment.
Yeah, you can tell, like, because they all of a sudden ramp up and are amazing.
So the background art is really good overall. Not all of it, but most of it is. Yeah.
The intro bit, I love the multimedia going on with, like, they're just using like every trick in the book.
Yes.
To pull that off. But it's awesome. Like, I appreciate that. It's almost like if you were to do it today, you would just put some like already pre-programmed filter over top of because it almost looks like it's pixelated, or like they're cutting frames out, or if they're actually just like taking a picture and like moving around the car, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. In the car sequence, they definitely took out frames, and that was deliberate. How did you watch it? Did you rent it?
I did a 7-day free trial of Stars on Amazon. Because that's how I watched it.
Okay. I took the opportunity to get myself a Blu-ray copy, which I'm glad I did, because there's a lot of artwork that looks really good in this, and it has a work print on it as a bonus feature. There's like like some finished shots and a lot of storyboards and a lot of pencil tests. I would say that the character animation is hit and miss, and I'd say it's like a lot of miss. Like it's probably about 60-40, like 60% miss, 40% hit.
I would also say the compositions and staging are like also all over the place. All of a sudden it feels like a, Saturday morning TV show. And then it's like really good. It feels like, you have like, Mobius did the storyboards and the art for this section, and it's fucking awesome. And then the B team did like the majority of the rest, because they're like, so I mean, it's sort of how it feels the entire way through.
Oh yeah, it's completely inconsistent. I'd say that most of the special effects look super cheesy, like all the optical printer stuff. It works when they're high. When they got those two stoner aliens, they get high, and they got
I wrote that down as whoever animated that, like the line quality in the characters and stuff, and the animation itself is really good. And again, the compositions are good. It feels more cinematic all of a sudden.
Yeah. So the segments, we got the soft landing, which is the car coming out of the spaceship and then landing on Earth.
I love that intro.
Did you see where apparently Elon Musk is a huge fan of this film, and a couple years ago,
I didn't
he put
know
a car in space.
Connected,
yeah, that was inspired by that movie. The Tesla that's up there, I guess it's still up there. There's a Tesla in orbit.
Yeah, with like a guy, like a fake,
yeah, with a dummy, like an astronaut dummy, and apparently it also says "Don't panic" on the dashboard.
Oh.
So they're referencing.
That makes me kind of like it like 2% more.
And so the car lands, and then we go into the astronaut's house, which apparently that's a different studio with a different director now.
You can tell, yeah. It's it's like, well, now this is going to be completely like American animated. It has a very American look to it.
I like some of the shots of the girl, like where she's scared and the green light shining up on her. It
is like kind of churns your stomach a little bit.
Yeah, it looks good. Some of those shots look really good. So the astronaut brings, this is where we get the wraparound story. There's different segments that are related via this shoehorned in wraparound story involving the Lochnar, which is like a green orb that kills people and melts the dad. So the astronaut takes it out and he touches it and it melts him immediately.
I wrote down a lot of melting people. Like the first 20 minutes has a lot of melting people.
So are there more boobs in this movie or melting people?
Boobs.
It's hard to say. Okay, boobs.
You know what? That's
we got to count them. I don't. Because the Lochnar alone melts like 3 or 4 people, right?
Yeah. And then
like
Harry
cab
Canyon.
driver, yeah, he melts 2 people.
What a name. When they landed that name, they high-fived for sure.
This feels very juvenile. That's the other thing that bothered me. It's like,
yes,
the stories were very
overtly
like teenage boys is clearly the audience they're going for with this.
But I guess I think what irks me now, and just to reiterate for the listeners, for all the millions of fans out there, we are both animators. Brad, he's stop motion expertise, and
not really.
I own a small animation studio, and we've did the animation for Under the Silver Lake.
So the Lochnar kills the astronaut and starts telling the daughter stories, and these stories are like the movie, basically. So
I guess what I was getting at before that was what irks me the most is that with the juvenile storytelling, it's just like there's so much work went into making this movie.
Oh yeah.
And like that's the script that they went with. Like, come on, like they could have punched it up a little bit.
That's one of the frustrating things about this movie, because a lot of it looks really good.
Yeah.
But in service of bad stories, basically, for the most part.
Another thing that irks me as an animator is you don't have to have the characters moving all the time. And just because it's animated doesn't mean it's good. If everything's animated, but it all looks like shit, like, well, who cares?
In a lot of segments, the characters are too detailed. That was like, so they were trying to, match. They were trying to match the look of the magazine, and the magazine features often a lot of like highly detailed art, which is cross-hatched and or pointillist or something like that.
But if you want to do that style, you have to have shots and camera moves and animation that at a certain level, like you can't, they overstretch themselves. They spread their butter too thin. Like they should have had, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I agree completely.
Quality over, hey, look, it's all animated, but it looks like shit. Don't overstretch your capabilities.
You're right. It's one of the huge downfalls of this movie is it's too ambitious. I think you can see this basic premise done well with the Netflix series Love, Death, and Robots.
Yes, I was
basically the same premise, but done well, because now with the technology we have now, you can make more diverse art styles that are animated.
Yeah.
In 1981, there was only so much you could do with animation, and they were trying to push the limits of what they had, and they pushed them basically to the breaking point.
Another thing I want to bring up is I think that, and this is something you might not even, if you don't draw all the time, if you're not an animator, you might not ever think about this, but like, how do you want to handle the hair? What's the hair look like when it blows? Is there lines in the hair beyond the contour? There's all these decisions you have to make. And this movie, they didn't know they didn't have any direction. There was one line, sometimes it doesn't.
There was one segment that I thought was successful, and that was the Captain Stern segment. They designed the characters in a way that they could be animated. Like a lot of the characters, like the Harry Canyon character, was just too detailed. They tried to give him a 5 o'clock shadow where they airbrushed it on, and it's just this splat on every frame because you can't control where the paint goes. So it's just, it's boiling and it's all over the place. They tried to do too much.
If you were to compare this to some stuff that's coming out of Japan at around this time, they had such a better grasp of how are you going to visually show something. And I'm talking about dust, clouds, water, hair, And also like the timing is so fucking even. Like, how did somebody not go like, guys, like, take out like 20 of these frames? Why is everything on ones?
Yeah. I was gonna say too, the effects animation in this is mostly bad. Like all of the smoke, blood, water, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Mostly looks bad. Sorry to throw shade on other artists here, but
well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they would probably agree. I also know like they were probably busting their asses to get this done. So this is like no computers.
Yeah. So
that's
is
unbelievable.
Shooting everything on film.
And then hand painting everything.
Yeah. And then filming it, with film, processing it. And so the first part is Harry Canyon, the cab driver from 2031. I think this is probably my favorite use of color.
I was just thinking about all the nude turnarounds of like all.
Oh, I know. Here's this character nude. Here's this character nude. Why don't they just take the head off and paste on the new head?
That's basically probably
because they all pretty much have the same body.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I really like the color in this segment. Just a lot of really pale green. New York City in 2031 still has cabs and the New York Times printed on paper.
Yeah, and like we said before, this is not animator friendly in any way. Apparently. I like the idea that I actually think it's kind of an interesting idea that like, oh, you want this when he goes to the cops.
Where they're charging
$1,000 for this. It's $1,000 for that. Like,
I've made a note of that too. The cops are charging money. I was curious what kind of dystopia that this is, but I guess the cops charging money reveals that everything's run by corporations now.
And then the big thing is that the illegal aliens, but they're actually from outer space aliens.
Yeah, that was a nice little nod there. Characters way too detailed in this segment. The woman's eyes are just dead. Sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of dead eyes. If I was going to make this better and I had the technology now, it would be like a lot of puppet animation.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Not only is you
get more detail for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And like if that's what you're going for, which they wanted it to look like a Mobius comic. I do get some like Fifth Element vibes with the yellow taxi and the city.
Yeah, and his apartment.
Yeah. Yeah, and the apartment, especially, and the police, which again, that was designed by Mobius.
I did think of that movie watching this segment, just the whole future cab driver thing.
There's really not much to that, like yeah, like he picks this girl up and then they kind of like screw over some mobsters, and then she double crosses him, and then he pulls the old extra button on the
That's the whole story.
Yeah.
he disintegrates two people in the back of his cab in the 15 minutes we see him.
So that adds to the tick. Check that off on the melting people.
Yeah. I don't know, like a death ray installed in the back of a cab doesn't make a lot of logical sense to me.
And it only affects clothing and people and not the car.
Well, did you notice where the first guy, the punk guy who tries to rob him, like when he gets disintegrated, he turns to a skeleton. But when the woman gets disintegrated, she loses all of her clothes.
Well, you got to get one more glimpse in. Yeah. Yep.
But wouldn't it be just as easy and less messy to have like a knockout ray? Like you stun them and then you just dump them and drive away. I mean,
completely incinerated.
There's no residue, no dust. There's nothing to clean up. It's ready for the next customer. I don't know.
Maybe a strange stench.
Wouldn't you at least want a sign or something that says, "Do not attempt to rob. This cab is equipped with a death ray"?
I do remember seeing this like when I was 13, thinking that it looked like nothing I'd ever seen before, this segment.
Yeah.
And I did think I was like, whoa, this is cool.
Yeah. Just whoa, they can do this in animation.
Yeah.
So then we come to far and away my least favorite segment, the den. I hate this segment. I got to be honest.
It is so teenage boy like sex fantasy.
Yeah.
It's insane.
This is what somebody like a 15-year-old thinks about while they're masturbating. That's the whole story.
This was the first time that I had heard somebody refer to their wiener as their dork.
First and only time, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone call it that. John Candy here. We should mention that the SCTV cast did all the voices. So you get John Candy, Eugene Levy, Harold Ramis. This is based on the art of Richard Corbin, who I'm probably not going to make a lot of friends here, but I never really cared for his art. He was famous for his shading. He always did shading really well. He had a very prolific career. He illustrated for like Hellboy and the Incredible Hulk and stuff, but I don't know. So I have a magazine of his, and you know, you're looking at one panel and it's just beautiful. You know, beautiful, correct proportions, good shading, good perspective, and then the next panel looks like a moderately talented high school student drawing logos on the back of a Trapper Keeper. And his use of color is like fun.
It's very psychedelic 70s.
All the segments I have something positive to say about. But this segment has no redeeming qualities. The music is terrible.
Yeah.
The effects are terrible. The story's terrible.
Animation's horrible.
The character wasn't even consistent. The character was popping around like he'd be totally different proportions from shot to shot.
Oh yeah, well, even within a shot, if they're moving in and out of like dimension. I did really like the design of the temple that he like gets transported to. Like honestly, thought it was awesome.
I'll give you that one. Oh, what about that character who's like that gay guy?
Holy shit!
I was like, are you kidding me?
Blowing my mind.
This is homophobic stereotype character.
And the animation is god awful. It's like the lowest point of the movie.
So apparently this segment was produced really quickly. They were hiring students to come in and animate. Like, we need this done quickly. You look at the shots and he is just a totally different character from shot to shot.
There's also, again, like I was saying before, like the characters are moving, like the whole goddamn, everything is animated over and over again. There's never like, all right, well, like he's just talking. So just the head's moving and maybe there's like a shoulder move with and everything else there's no layers.
Right.
To the animation. And like when they're sneaking into the castle to get the thing from the other boob girl, like all of the henchmen that are following him, they're just looking everywhere and it's so bad. Like, why are you, it's almost like there was a proving ground for like, if you're saying it's these students, like, shit, I have to make everything moving all the time.
He has sex with two women. This is like, there's two sex scenes with two different women in this segment.
Well, yeah, he's about to be killed by the one. She's like, wait a second. And then the henchmen are like, here she goes again.
Yeah.
So
this segment almost kills the movie for me.
Yeah.
All right. So that segment's terrible. We'll skip past all right. So if you're watching this, it does go uphill. And then we go to probably my favorite segment in terms of the art style. This is the Captain Stern segment.
Yeah.
This is the one where I think they translated it well. They designed the characters well so that it had the feeling of the book, but wasn't too detailed. And the character animation was really good, especially the guy transforming. He's like staggering, and there's some really nice bits in there.
Yes, it has follow through, and it's pulled together by the style, and it stays. It's not so uneven. Now
that one apparently was produced by a very small studio, whereas like just a handful of people doing everything.
Yeah.
The director of that segment
That kind of might be the reason it's kind of better, is because if you had some talented couple of guys, you can really pull off some pretty good stuff.
Directed by Julian Harris and Paul Cebola, neither of whom have Wikipedia pages. There was a deleted segment, which is in the print reel, between Captain Stern and B-17.
See, I wrote sweet transition to part 4.
The B-17?
Yeah, I like that because it just goes right into it. Like,
yeah.
Instead of jumping back, I thought that gave it some nice texture to the overall feel.
I think B-17's pretty good too. The character animation is not great in it.
No, but they're going for something different, and I've never seen anything quite like this.
It's really dark. The colors are appropriately muted.
The rotoscoping of how the sky and the plane looks great.
Yeah, there's a model plane that they shot that was in some scenes rotoscoped and in some scenes given this frame by frame translucent color overlay. But it looks good. The plane looks good. The character animation is not great.
No.
The zombies look really good and the colors are good, and it's short. It's like just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, there's just nothing to it, really. You're just thrown into a situation that looks cool, but other than that, it does have. I wrote down that the skydiving shot is particularly maybe one of the better shots of the whole film.
That's true. So
I just think as the execution of it, other than the character animation, is pretty solid.
Then we get to So Beautiful and So Dangerous, which is the segment with the stoner aliens.
Love the backgrounds on
Yes. Earth. In this one, this is another one where the backgrounds were painted by the same guy who did the original comic.
Oh, okay.
Angus McKee is the artist. I like the effects. Apparently there's effects created by taking the artwork, cutting little holes in it, and then shining a light through it. That's where you get those lens flares, the glowing lights, and all the when they land the spaceship. These
that's my favorite. That scene is fucking awesome. It looks great.
Yeah,
they're pulling. They're like, all right, how are we gonna do this? Oh, it's just a drawing. It's one nice painting of this ship. Mm-hmm. Being animated with parallaxing things, and whenever it crashes into stuff, it looks great. The sparks look great when it starts screeching to a halt. And Harold Ramis talking about being high and landing before is hilarious.
Yes, Harold Ramis plays a stoner alien who crash lands his ship onto a dock.
It's very stoner and it's very Canadian.
Oh, it's so Canadian. They get out this space cocaine, which is in a vacuum, and they have these big noses that they put it all over the floor. They make these giant rails.
It's like they reverse. It's like they have a lawnmower, but instead of cutting, it just plops out cocaine and
Yeah. The only thing that bothers me about that segment is once again the woman in it. I think she looks ridiculous. The secretary.
Yeah, she is. Her animation is all over the place.
Yeah.
Her mass of her face and how they're handling her nose and stuff.
And of course, she gets naked and has sex with someone.
A robot this time.
John Candy robot.
Yeah.
There was a
like
scene,
John Candy robots.
I like John Candy as the robot here. I hated him as Den, but I like him as the robot. There was a scene where they got married that was animated to the point of pencil test and then cut from the movie.
Because they're talking about it.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, sure.
So that's a good segment. There's some cool effects. The Enterprise makes an appearance. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah, I saw that.
I don't have to shoehorn in a Star Trek reference. It was already there.
Yeah, I love the concept of it's like Creepshow or something. There's a through story, and then there's all these little things, and you bring in all these different artists. Hell yeah. But God damn it, none of these have a fucking script that work in any way. Like there's no, even the one, what's the one that we, with the trial and it's all like a big
Captain
con?
Stern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like what the hell is even going on there? Like, I guess if I was reading the comic, maybe it'd make more sense, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like,
He's on trial for all these horrible crimes, and he hires this guy to turn into a Hulk and chase everyone away.
But the crimes seem to have nothing to do with like what he, like as a captain would, you know what I mean? They're like,
it's ridiculous.
Like pedophilia and
it's a horrible stuff. Human trafficking. And he's like this sort of big chin superhero looking guy who you think is the hero. And
but how they have that set up, it's like, oh, the ball, the little orb, the evil orb thing that's throughout the whole movie is causing him to Jekyll and Hyde and freak out. But then at the end, it's like, oh no, he's just, I don't know.
It doesn't make sense. And
well, shit, now we just jumped back so many. We're almost on part 6.
Well, the wraparound section is probably, again, one of my least favorite parts of the film. It feels really shoehorned in. I don't know that it needed to have a wraparound story. I think it could have been like Creepshow, where it's like it goes to a comic book and the page turns and you zoom into the next page or something like that.
It could have just been like the green orb, like enters the story and leaves the story and you follow it into the next world.
Well, most of these, with the exception of the Harry Canyon segments, were culled from the pages of the book. They were all published as stories, and the Lochnar wasn't in any of them. They put the Lochnar stories into all the other segments when it wasn't originally there.
I want a t-shirt, a black t-shirt with a glowing green orb on the front, and it just says like Lochnar for life or something.
The guy's hand with the bone sticking out. It's like the hand is holding it.
That's very 80s.
So, wait, where were we? It was the So Beautiful, So Dangerous section.
Right, and now we're
in the last jumping. Tarna is the last section.
But this is where you kind of start finding why the Lochnar is talking to that little girl. Is because he's like, you're actually going to destroy me someday, so I'm here to destroy you. Now watch how you destroy me.
Well, at the end of the story, the little girl who's been listening to the stories turns into Tarna, the character in the last section.
And she's on the iconic poster for the movie.
Yes. This is a recurring character in the magazine. It's a Mobius character. We spend about 15 minutes with her. It's basically a revenge Western type story. There's the bar scene where she walks into the bar. It's so Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, she just doesn't talk at all.
It's like basically The Man with No Name.
Which on an animation point of view, that's a great, like, to have a character that doesn't have to move its mouth ever.
I really like the animation on Tarna, as lascivious as it is. Like in the section where she's like gearing up, she has this whole gearing up montage where she puts on all of her armor. I really like the character animation there. Most of it's rotoed, but I think it looks really good.
Yes, that segment, although there's some ridiculous stuff happening, it is really good. The backgrounds are awesome with the light shining onto the just how, again, like I was saying before, how they're pulling everything off and how they're deciding to pull stuff off with the highlights on the lake and the music and the pacing, and she has to swim over to the temple or the statue. Like all of that stuff is fucking awesome. It feels right.
Yeah, this is definitely a highlight of the movie. Most of Tarna was rotoscoped. They filmed a model doing all of the actions and then kind of traced over every fifth frame or so and filled in the rest. Even the other characters, most of the characters are rotoed there.
Yes, there is a section where you can tell it's kind of after the rotoscope thing we were talking about, where it's actually footage of like a desert canyon. Actually, I don't really know how they pulled that off. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they shot, a live action shot. They built a model of the landscape. They shot on a motion control rig. They shot like a crane shot going through it, and then frame by frame painted over it.
Wow.
Yeah, which is the same thing they did in 2001, but it looks a lot cleaner there. You can really see there's some real glaring mistakes in the animation in that segment. When I first saw it, it was really jarring. Like, it looked so different than illustrated backgrounds.
After that segment is done, it goes to more of like it looks like it's straight up Mobius's backgrounds, like his drawings.
Yeah.
And she's flying by this giant skull and stuff. That looks really good. And like there's some really cool parallaxing where there's all these tubes and stuff. She's going into this old city. That stuff's awesome.
I love the band in the bar.
I wrote down future band ... woof.
Apparently that was Devo.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. Well, the music, but
yeah.
I just like all the designs of the instruments. Oh, like I want to see that band. I would go see that.
Never fucking works. Like it made me think of whenever they like went back into the Star Wars prequels and they added like this like 10-minute scene of this crazy fully CG alien singing.
Oh, I know. Terrible.
Like absolutely the worst. Like if you're doing future movies, don't put a fucking band in there.
I would see that band though. They look super cool.
All right, get me a ticket. I'll come. I'll go with you, man.
Yeah, that whole segment is very Clint Eastwood, Man with No Name. So yeah, I guess at the end they loop back around. She gets her vengeance on the mutants that killed her city, I guess.
Well, she stops the, what's it called again?
Lochnar.
The Lochnar. You know what I mean? That's
another thing a 15-year-old would have come up with, by the way. Yeah. Let's call it the Lochnar.
Schnipschnar, Schneishnar, Lochnar. Yeah, that sounded good.
Well, that was the end. First, she had to get her revenge on the mutants that killed the elders. Remember, they took the one guy's head off and broke into the temple, and she gets there too late. Her city's gone, so she basically seeks out revenge against the band of mutants that burned it to the ground, and she kills them all.
There's nothing to grasp story-wise.
I just told you. That was the whole story.
Yeah, I know. It's not grasping me.
No, it's pretty. I mean, that one at least is drawing from like a classic Western. At least they're pretending to reference. They're not just making stuff up where it's like, oh, I rescue the princess and then she has a bunch of sex with me. Yeah.
And then I get captured by the hot queen and she has sex with me.
Yeah.
This is definitely like it's a nostalgic movie for many. If you're not into animation and stuff, and into like campy sci-fi, it's definitely going to be a hard watch. Like my wife would be like out as soon as she saw like boobs. She'd just be like, this movie is insane. Like as soon as
my wife was out, she just said this movie sucks. And she went to bed. Like after the Harry Canyon segment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely not for everybody.
No.
I think animators should see this at least once, though. I mean, you're going to be offended by the representation of women in it because every woman in this movie is a sex object, but there is some really nice artwork.
Especially, when you're in school and stuff, maybe I think there's a lot to take from this. Like there's stuff that's made now that sort of has Super Jail sort of has a vibiness to the messiness of the art,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and the colors. I feel like you could take some of this style and repurpose it and make it awesome today. You know, if in like a little tiny like Adult Swim promo piece or something, if it like looked like heavy metal.
Well, I kind of think that's what Love, Death, and Robots is. It's basically the same premise. Like,
Right. Oh, I'm talking strictly style. Not like I get like, yeah, the premise is
oh, you
maybe
mean
the
like
best part.
just the art style? You mean
Just that art, like that early 80s animation art style, Western art style.
yeah,
They,
very
they are
Canadian.
at least, they're definitely pulling from anime though, with the camera moves. Disney wasn't exactly doing that stuff. Disney was all about the character animation. It's always like very theatrically staged shots where you see the entire character because like, look, we're so good at animating.
Mise en scène. Yeah. Women in animation. They're obviously no women worked on this. And the men that worked on it, I'm not sure they ever interacted with a woman outside of like watching porn.
They were like, this is the best. I'm working on a goddamn masterpiece right now.
There's more women working in animation now, which is good. The supervising director for season 2 of Love, Death, and Robots is the lady who directed Kung Fu Panda 2, Jennifer Yu.
Oh, yeah, she's awesome. There's a great interview when she's was directing one of the Kung Fu Panda 2 or 3 she comes on.
2,
as
I
director?
think. Yeah, 2.
Okay, 2. It's like this longer little, almost like a documentary on her. And she's at home and she has like a Cintiq and she has the coolest fucking storyboards you've ever seen. And it's like ultra violent. And she's like, yeah, I'll never like, this stuff's just for me. I'll never show anybody. And it's the coolest fucking shit you've ever seen.
That's on Kung Fu Panda 2 DVD.
I don't know. It's on YouTube somewhere.
She directed the third one too.
Yeah. Yeah. She's awesome. That's really exciting. I hope she does some stuff that like her passion stuff, not like her super violent stuff.
She's Korean.
Yeah. Mad respect. She's awesome.
Yeah. I'm excited for that season 2. I don't know when it's coming out, but so I guess that's it for heavy metal. We get back in the wraparound story. Yeah. So the little girl becomes Tarna at the end. Tarna at the end of her story, after she gets her revenge, sacrifices herself to destroy the Lochnar. And then the little girl becomes Tarna. So I guess I guess a time loop is the only logical explanation. That was what I had. The problem I had with the ending is I didn't understand what it, like if Tarna destroyed the Lochnar, then how did the Lochnar tell these stories? But if it's time loop, that makes sense.
Well, also, how about the actual model of the house exploding?
Oh, that's another thing too. They were going to roto that, but they ran out of time. So they just left it.
Yeah.
They did build a model of the house for a bunch of the shots, a bunch of the exteriors to get it. That was kind of rotoed as well. But yeah, they blew up the model and they didn't have time to roto it. So it's just live action. It looks okay, though. It's not totally distracting because it's like all in silhouette and there's like a dramatic green light behind it. So
yeah,
I didn't mind it.
No, I didn't mind it either. And the fact that it was just that whole segment of him driving, like the multimedia of it all kind of, I like that kind of stuff, you know?
Well, it's like you said, where they were just using every trick they had. You know, there weren't a lot of options in 1981 for animation. There was only so much you could do. And considering what year it was and what the technology they had and what they were setting out to do.
Yeah.
I got to give this movie respect
I give it
for
props,
that.
For sure.
It is dated, and it's very inconsistent, but it's worth watching. you know, at least once if you're an artist. I feel like that's a good ending though, right there.
Yeah. Yeah, heavy metal, man. I don't it's we're bad at ending podcasts.
Yeah. The soundtrack too. We forgot to talk about the music.
Oh yeah, the heavy metal music in it.
There's heavy metal in a movie called Heavy Metal, features heavy metal music. Some of it is super cheesy, like that Journey song. Ugh. Like he takes her home to his apartment and it's Journey.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I'm getting like middle school skate place vibes. All right, time for the slow couple dance. We're gonna play Open Arms by Journey.
I was surprised, like I was just waiting for Alex to walk down the stairs. I was watching it in the living room, and it just to be one of these like just what are you watching? Like,
would she be mad?
I think she would rag me for sure. Like, what the fuck is this? You know?
Well, tell her it's for art. Tell her I made you.
Yeah. Yeah, Brad made me do it.